Here I am explaining the atomic absorption spectrum of hydrogen because hydrogen is the smallest element. What is an atomic absorption spectra? What is the difference between line emission spectra and absorption spectra? Here white light is passed through hydrogen gas and the hydrogen gas is at low pressure. And what is happening? Some of the wavelengths is absorbed by the hydrogen gas. Some of the wavelengths of the white light is absorbed by the hydrogen gas. And the remaining is passed through the prism. The spectrum of white light is analyzed. When we analyze the spectrum of white light, it is found that certain wavelengths are missing. What is happened? When the white light is passed through hydrogen gas, some of the wavelengths are absorbed by the hydrogen gas and the remaining is passed through the prism. Then after passing through the prism will produce a spectrum of that light. And when we analyze this spectrum, what is happened? Some of the wavelengths are missing. These missing wavelengths are called dark lines. These missing wavelengths are called dark lines. And this type of spectrum is called absorption spectrum. As the name implies, some of the wavelengths or some of the lines are absorbed. Some of the wavelengths are absorbed by the hydrogen gas. So we are producing the remaining lines only. So that's why the spectrum is known as absorption spectrum. So absorption spectrum of hydrogen, how it is producing? White light is passed through hydrogen gas, which is kept at a low pressure. And during that process, the hydrogen gas absorbs some of the wavelengths of white light and it will come out from the hydrogen gas. After absorption of some of the wavelengths, the remaining wavelengths will come out from the hydrogen gas and it is passed through the prism. So prism will produce what? The corresponding spectrum. So when you analyze the spectrum produced by this prism, we can see that some of the wavelengths are missing. These missing wavelengths are called dark lines. And this type of spectrum is known as absorption spectrum. So as the name implies, some of the wavelengths are absorbed by the hydrogen gas. So this type of spectrum is known as absorption spectra. Next is the comparing line emissions and absorption spectra. Emission spectrum, it is created when the atoms of an element releases energy. Absorption spectra, it is created when the atoms of an element absorbs energy. So emission spectrum is created by when the atoms of an element releases energy. When an atom releases energy. But absorption spectrum is produced by when the atoms of an element absorbs energy. Then emission spectrum, it consists of colored lines. And in the case of absorption spectrum, it consists of dark lines. Dark lines means that missing lines. Another interesting thing is the wavelengths of light that are absorbed by the cold hydrogen gas correspond exactly to the wavelength of the light that are emitted by the hot hydrogen gas. That means the energy of the incoming photon that must be equal to the energy difference between the energy levels. Then only the electron can absorb that photon and it can move from the one energy level to the another energy level. So the energy of the incoming photon should be equal to the energy difference. Then only an electron can absorb the energy and it can move from the lower orbit to the higher orbit. Otherwise, the electron will not absorb the energy. So if the incoming photon energy is less than the difference in the energy level, the electron will not absorb the energy. So the energy of the photon should be equal to the difference in the energy level. Then only the electron can move from the lower energy level to the higher energy level.